Thank you for joining today's episode of Aerial Views. Today I'm with Lorenzo Murzilli from Murzilli Consulting. Really happy to have you here, Lorenzo. Maybe you could just start with a short introduction about what your organization does.
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you for having me here. My name is Lorenzo Murzilli. I'm the CEO and founder of Murzilli Consulting. We are an aviation consulting agency focused on both traditional and modern advanced aviation. And what we try and do is support organizations with a regulatory challenge. So we act as an outsourced regulatory department, both at strategic levels, so helping boards navigate the challenges of regulation, product placement, regulatory pathway optimization, investors pitching, and trying to figure out when and how things will happen, and all the way down to more an implementation level on operation authorization, type certification in the US, for example, or design verification in Europe. And most recently, with the U-Space, we're starting to get engaged with the USSP certification, so supporting companies that are trying to get the certification out of to become a USSP in Europe. So very exciting and moving fast for sure.
Great. So let's dive right into the U-Space topic then. How do you feel we're doing in Europe with implementing U-Space overall?
Yeah, so I mean, the regulation is out, right? It entered into force less than a month ago, I would say, and it provides a framework for everybody to work on. There is AMC and guidance material out there, being consulted, being debated. Something is too hard, something is too easy, but there is material out there that authorities and actors of the use space can use. I think the next step now is for, it's kind of a parallel track, right? On the one end, we need member states, authorities that are in charge of the national airspace to establish use spaces. And on this, I would say we are not so far, right? I mean, no one has done it yet, and nothing is really in sight if you speak about weeks, right? Things are months and possibly years away. I would say that the reason for that is possibly that there has been a generic underestimation of the effort, right? Figuring out use space is not easy, local condition, risk assessment, etc. And so now member states have to, act and start to do the work. In parallel to that, I think the industry has to also prepare themselves. As I mentioned before, we need to start to certify the actors. That we have the common information service providers. We have the USSP, so US space service providers. They need to go through their own certification project. So this is also ongoing. I know of a few that are doing the work. So I think we are getting our act together collectively as Europe, possibly with some months and I hope not years of delay on what would have been possible. But I'm optimistic.
Now, when I see a lot of talk in the news about trials related to U-Space, one notable one is the Hamburg Port U-Space sandbox. I mean, is there anyone that you would highlight that you think is leading the charge and maybe being first to actually implement U-Space?
Well, you mentioned the Harbor Port. That's a good one, right? Alaska is a great company, and we work with them, of course. And it's no secret, but we like them. They have a very professional approach to things and very, I would say, industrial approach to things versus a more of a consumer or prosumer kind of approach. So that's kind of reassuring in many aspects. The other thing is, in general, I mean, there are a lot of companies that are doing the same, right? If you look at those who are trying to certify themselves, just here in Switzerland, there are a few, some with the EASA from companies which are not in Europe. And I mean, absent a very specific guidance material on AMC, it's difficult to. We have one, right? But we don't have standards really in place, so it's difficult to figure out who's ahead. At the end of the day, I think we want as many as we can, right? We want an open market, we want good competition there, and the winner. We will see who the winners will be, right, in the future. But yeah, some good starters for sure.
Great. So another important topic, everyone wants to fly BVLOS. And of course, we need to fly BVLOS for the growth in the drone industry to be able to reach its potential. So one of the important factors in that overall discussion is remote ID. So as we think about remote ID, I mean, either specific to Europe or in generally what you're seeing in other geographies, how are we doing there?
I think it's another interesting discussion because somehow everything is related, right? So if you think about the European framework, why is remote ID an important element to that? Is because obviously it's one of the four mandatory services of a use space, right? So first of all, if you are building towards a use space, you want to have a remote ID as somewhat like your foundation service on top of which to build the others. And there are standards to do that have been published and used. And they exist, so the both member states and ecosystem players can use those standards to develop a remote ID as a foundational block for use space. Now, even if you are not thinking about use space, there is the general topic of security, much more than safety, I would say, when it comes to remote ID. But in general, this idea that you want to create a world of where compliance is possible, right? You want to create a world where the police has certainty on who is flying legally, to be then able to focus their attention on who is flying illegally. And we have this debate a lot because people always say, yeah, but if you are a criminal, you will not use your space. You will not use a drone with remote ID, right? And there are two answers to that, one being kind of a joke and the other one being more serious. The first one, you'll be surprised how many criminals use cars registered to themselves to commit crimes. Just go out there and check that out. And the second is that there is a lot of non-criminal but incompetent people that could be caught in doing, infractions of airspace and stuff like that, simply because those things are complicated. And it's pretty easy, even if you are trained, etc., to make mistakes. So definitely the remote ID would be a way to reduce those numbers, right, to an acceptable level, and really make sure that when you see an infringement, when you see something odd, the police can trust that's probably something that I need to focus on. When it comes to how does this entire thing builds towards BVLOS, again, it's first as a cultural shift towards, drones are operated legally, drones are operated in a compliant way, and it's visible to everybody. So that helps it to create credibility. And second, again, at least in Europe, in my opinion, the real BVLOS enabler is use space. And remote ID is the first building block of that. So definitely it's a step in the right direction.
Anyone doing something interesting in this area that you could highlight?
I mean, my former colleague here in Switzerland and the good old Swiss use space implementation never fails to impress. Like there is here a functioning remote ID system, and it has again fully built in compliance with the regulation and the standard. It is voluntary, right? So you could say it's not used to the extent it could be used, again, because there is no real incentive for people other than those that really want to try it to be on the system, right? So that regulation will change that. When this will become a mandatory regulation, you will see this system then thrive and somehow be used to its full potential. And other countries that are working on that, of course, the UK, although I cannot speak about that because I'm involved in the project as well. But again, good thinking processes over there, mainly on how you can do things better, considering the experience that have been already made, right? So it's more of a discussion about how do we make things, be better? How do we make things to their full potential versus early trials? So that's also an interesting efforts over there.
So we're still pretty early in the year, so I can still ask you this question about looking ahead at 2023. So what are the things that you're most excited about for this year? Could be technology, could be programs. I mean, where's your head for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the general trend that we are observing is that it's getting more and more difficult to get capital, out there. And investors are getting a little bit more cautious, right? And this could be a bad thing, but for me, it's actually a good thing because it's no more time of, let's say, just POCs. It's not about you going out there and try something. I think 2023 and possibly beginning of 24 is where we need to show unit economics, right? We need to show that we can make money with these machines. And to do that, the path is quite clear, right? For depending on what you are doing, but the path is clear. The path is one pilot for multiple drones. The path is beyond visual line of sight in a repetitive way. And I think this is a difficult path. So I think what we're going to see is those that cannot make it, they will unfortunately not make it. But those that can they have the potential to attract significant investments, right, and push their industry forward. So I don't say full consolidation for sure, but I think the cards are on the table now. We need to start play serious, like otherwise we're not going to get the money and the funding we need to move forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I think that I really believe we need innovation from startups to grow this side of the industry. We can't have all of the same aviation players doing it the way they've always done it, being the only ones playing a role. So, that requires investment. And I read a study recently that was specific to investment in eVTOL, so venture capital investment in eVTOL. And on the one hand, it was a very positive study and a very positive outlook for passengers actually embracing this technology. But they quoted some pretty serious numbers about the number of companies currently operating in this space and how many of them they would expect to, I'll say, consolidate, because that's maybe a nicer way to say it, over the next 2 years. And it was more than half. So I totally understand where you're going with this.
Yeah,
comment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was my questions for today. If there's anything else you'd like to add, feel free.
Thank you very much, I think, for the interview, and thanks to those listening. And anything you need, you can reach out to me anytime.
Great. Thank you so much. And it was really nice to speak with you today.